Welcome to this week's episode of A Drummer's Guide to. So this week I'm so excited, and that's because this subject is just the best thing to me. It is the most valuable bit of information that I have in my head. I know that I ramble a lot. Like, I am aware that I like to talk. But if you only listen to one thing from me, one episode, one concept, one theory, one bit of advice, it's this episode. If you do this one thing, I promise you will become a better musician. You'll become closer to the musician that you want to be in your head. It's this piece of advice I was given and then put into practice changed my life. Like, absolutely continues to change my life. I was in a musical situation a couple of weeks ago and I was still putting this into practice, and I was still refining and getting better and making the whole situation even better. But anyway, I'm going to stop rambling. Just listen to this episode now, enjoy it, and I hope you get as much from it as I did when I first learnt about this. Enjoy! This is serious. I'm not even joking. I'm not actually joking. This is the best way to become a better musician, bar none. It was told to me when I was 18 years old by the legendary Billy Ward. I listened. I went, yeah, it's a great idea. I didn't implement it for another probably 2 or 3 years. I wish I'd done this since I was 11 years old, since the day I started, because I know that I would be so much more of a better musician now than I am. And I'm glad that I have implemented it, and I've been doing it for the last 10 years, basically every day these days. And I need to share it with you. And please listen, because I can't tell you what a difference this makes. So, the number one, the way to get better as a musician, it doesn't matter if you're a drummer, a guitarist, singer, anything, is, wait for it, record yourself and listen back. Simple solution. It's such a simple concept, but trust me when I tell you that simple thing will change everything. Like I said, this was told to me. I listened, but I didn't implement it. So I had this lesson and I was like, oh yeah, great idea. But honestly, it's the thing that changed my playing. Like 100% changed my playing. It took me from being a drummer who wanted to be a professional to being a professional very quickly. And it wasn't even just about being a professional, it was about becoming the drummer that I wanted to be. I was so frustrated as a kid playing and not being the player that I wanted to be. I heard myself play and I thought, yeah, I can play the drums, but I don't sound the way I want to sound. And also at the time, I was working out how I wanted to sound, but I just couldn't. There was a disconnect between my playing and how I wanted to sound, and I wasn't happy, but I didn't know why, and I didn't know how to pinpoint it, and I didn't know how to change it. And this is the thing that changed it. So I didn't even buy. I got given from my dad this little mini tape recorder, and I remember the first time I ever recorded myself and listened back, and I was playing to a click. It was in Sharice's studio. Sharice had a studio when we were about 20, 21, and I went round to her house, and I used to go around there to practice, and I I put on a click, I pressed record, I played along for about, I don't know, a minute, something like that, and I listened back. It was the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. I was so embarrassed. It was almost like the whole of my drumming career, flashed before my eyes. And I was like, I'm the worst drummer in the world. I am terrible. I can't even play in time. What is happening? So, yeah. It was from that point that, in my cringeworthy state, it was to the point that I was like, I can't do that again. Like, that was so embarrassing. I can't actually record myself again. but I did. And it was from that point that I became literally obsessed with recording myself and listening back. But as I said, it was hard and it was horrible, and my psyche definitely suffered, my confidence definitely suffered initially. I mean, in the long run it helped, and but yeah, it was awful. So I would record everything that I did. So when I was practicing anything to do with like practicing for lessons, so I was having lessons with Mike Dolbear, and I would be recording myself practicing whatever I was practicing for him. And I mean, that was just devastating. That was awful. I would practice just generally playing to a click because I was all about groove and I just wanted to have a nice groove and a nice feel. So I would practice playing to a click, just grooves. That was awful. I would practice playing to songs. I mean, at the time, I think I was obsessed with, in fact I know I was Continuum by John Mayer, and I just wanted to sound like Steve Jordan, so I would practice playing to that, and that sounded awful, and it was just like, it was just the worst. And then I started recording the gigs that I was playing. Now this was even more devastating, because not only did I not sound as good as I did, and not only was I not locking in with the band as much as I thought I was, but as it turns out, I was counting in the songs really fast, and I thought I was playing these songs at exactly the right tempo. No, like 9 times out of 10 it was too fast or it was too slow, and it was just this endless sort of thing of, oh my gosh, is that how I sound? It was awful. It was devastating, like really. But it was so devastating and heartbreaking. It really made me work so hard, which was great because ultimately it made me A, realise where I wanted to be as a player, and B, it gave me literal instant feedback as to how quickly I was getting there. And I say to every musician who wants to be better, it's not even about being a professional, it's about being better. Record yourself and listen back. It is the best thing that you can do. And even if, so I had this situation where I would play along to a song, let's say, all right, okay, we're talking about Continuum, so Slow Dancing in a Burning Room, right? Great tune, feel for days. I would play along to that and I would listen back, and it wasn't locked in with what Steve Jordan was doing, and it was devastating, and I was but I would listen back and I'd go, oh my god, this is awful, this is awful, this is awful. But the worst thing was, I don't know why. But what I did was, I was like, okay, well, let me just try again. Now, even though I didn't know consciously what it was, when I played it again and listened back again, it would be ever so slightly better. So you don't even need to know why necessarily on a conscious level what is wrong or anything like that. I'm convinced there are subconscious minutiae things that your body, your mind, your whole being will do to get to the point that you want to be going. But you need to have a point of reference, and it's all good and well thinking that your ears are good enough to get there. But when you're learning, especially when you're starting out, and I still feel like this, my ears are not as advanced as someone who has been playing music for 40 years. And there will always be someone who has more mature ears. So how naive would it be to think that me hearing in real time would be an accurate sort of representation of what's actually going on? Anyway, I just wanted to get this out there. It is my number one thing. It is the best way to, get better, as I say. And like I said, I started out with a mini tape recorder. Like, it's ridiculous. I did upgrade. So I had one before this, but I had one of these little things. It's a USB recorder thing. It's great. It's so good. They're not that expensive. I actually had one before this that got retired because the batteries went all weird and it went all over. Oh, poor thing. I had that one for years, so that's a fairly new one. But even on phones these days, you have apps, and you can get things like these sort of microphones that you plug into your phone, and it's so easy to just record yourself and listen back and actually hear the actual real world reality of how you're playing. And it's gonna be gross at first. It's gonna be difficult, and if it's not, I'm really jealous of you. I have never been so ashamed of my playing as that day in Sharice's studio. But I'm not ashamed anymore because I've worked really hard, and like I say, every day I'm recording now. So it has worked in the long run, and it's that initial devastation will help you get to where you want to be as a player, get your feel in the right place where you want it to be, your technique, you know, your placement of where you're playing stuff, like everything will come into focus, if you like, if you just record yourself and listen back. I hope you enjoyed that episode in the way that it was intended. And I don't often ask this, but I think this is such an important subject. It's an important tip. It's, like I say, it's everything to me, this. And I literally will scream it at people like as often as I can. So if you have done this, if you think this is valuable, if you think someone is actually going to benefit from listening to this episode, please share it with other people. Please spread the word. I don't care whether you sort of like take it as your own and say, you know, I found out, you know, I've made up this thing. If you record yourself and listen back, I don't care. I literally don't care. All I care about is getting this message out to people, because I think it is the single best thing that any creative really can do. If you can find a way of getting feedback about what you are as a creative and then working on it, I think that's the most valuable thing in the world. So please share this with anyone that you can, whether it's the physical episode or just the concept, but go shout about it. And if you haven't implemented it yourself, go do that first, because you truly will understand the gravitas, if you like, of it once you've done it a bit. And as I said in that episode, it might be really uncomfortable at first, and talk about being out of your comfort zone and having a bit of a shock. I certainly did. But it will be worth it. I promise you. I've never stood by something so much as this concept. And as I always say, a huge thank you to Billy Ward for telling me about it, because that conversation that day absolutely changed my life, and I will forever be grateful to him for that, and he happens to be a legend. Anyway, right, I'm going to stop going on and on as usual, but if you have any questions yourself, anything you're struggling with, anything you'd like to ask me at all, then drop me an email at info@adrummersguide2.com. And I'll be back next week with another subject. I will be talking about how to earn a living in the music industry, and what that means to me, and how I have earned a living in the music industry. Yeah, just the reality of it, and yeah, I'll leave it at that. Okay, so I will see you next week. I hope you have a lovely week, whatever you're up to, and I will see you then. All right, lots of love, you guys. Bye.